Before we start, I changed the rules a bit. Instead of asking whether said city has this and that and doesn't commit this sin, I ask myself 3 simple questions. Number 1, do I want to live there, or at the very least tolerate living there? This question covers a lot of things. Does it have a good mall in it or nearby? Does it have a hospital, school, university? Are there enough green spaces? Does traffic flow well inside? Do the developers not screw over the residents? If yes, we move on to question number 2. Can I live motor vehicle and taxi like there? Can I do most trips there without relying on a car, which is expensive, or taxi services, which is also expensive, or a motorcycle, which is not expensive but you risk ending up in a talking head video? Though motor vehicle and taxi light is a mouthful, so I will refer it to as car light. Number 3. Are they repentant from doing stupid or scandalous things? For example, saying no to Transjakarta services or doing excessive levels of segregation from local communities. If a city makes me say yes to all 3 questions, congratulations, it has a score of at least D-. This rule change does change up the positions of cities mentioned on the previous video, and combine that with an influx of newer cities, D and E tier has become dangerously overcrowded, so I'm splitting both into plus and minus. Also, this tier list is not exactly a 100% reflection on where I would want to live personally. For example, Gading got F tier. I did bump them up to E+, but given the choice, I would stay here because I live here, this is my home, and it's literally my job to preach transit and walkability, hoping one day the developers repent. With that out of the way, these two are merged in the review because number 1, they act like they're the same city. They're directly connected, use the same highway exit, their residents likely go to the same mall and hospital, and 2, they have the exact same problem. Do I want to live there? Well, maybe. Direct highway access, there's a mall and a hospital, though the mall is small and not very good. There's a lot of culinary options, walkability is generally above average for Jakarta standards. Most, in fact, I think all housing clusters have shops in the front. Being able to comfortably walk to your local Alfamart is generally a good sign of walkability. The sidewalks are 3-lane and most roads are only 4 lanes wide, which means crossing them should be easy. Of course, it's not all perfect. Look at this utterly diabolical zebra cross. Speaking of roads, they aren't very good. They might look smooth, but my car was rocking side to side like a pirate ship. This brings us to number 2. Can you live here? Car light. No. There's 0 internal public transport, no local shuttle bus, no local angkot line. That one GRC line I heard is quite dead, unless you live in the very northern tip of Greenlake City, where you can ride the surprisingly useful Jak 50, you're cooked. At least Kalidara station is not too far away, so Gojek to the station won't break your wallet too much. Also, what is it with bus companies half-assing GR connection nights? 1 departure a day, making sure as few people as possible can use this thing. Leaving Monas at 5 p.m, people leave the office at 5 p.m. You think people can teleport from their office desk on the 15th floor to the bus? I'm starting to think the people who manage bus companies never actually rode a bus themselves. But considering the only thing holding back these 2 cities is transit, just 1 Microtrans line connecting 1 district with Kalidara station and terminal, or a Transjakarta line going from the northern tip of Greenlake City, entering the highway and terminating in either Sleepy or Grogol, can give this city a passing grade. Anyway, E-. Update: Trans Tangerang opened an angkot line connecting Greenlake City with Puri's Plawa terminal. It doesn't count because it doesn't actually go inside Greenlake City. You know, I was going to be soft with Metland Cibitung. The moment I stepped outside, I saw sidewalks, some even 3-line, a water park in the distance, and this sorry excuse of a mall, though at least it has a cinema. Walking past the mall, I saw a small but decently well-maintained public park and a hospital in the distance. For the most part, Metland Cibitung has checked the boxes of providing basic facilities for its residents. Public transport, no local shuttle bus or angkot, but this train station is pretty nice, and you can actually access it from the south too. This section of the Cikarang line is also decently frequent. There seem to be trains every 10 minutes or less, and the top speed in this section is 95 km per hour. The problems, however, started to appear when I checked how long it would take to go from here to places like Bekasi City and Lippo Cikarang. Everything is 40 minutes away, and The reason why everything is 40 minutes away is because Metland didn't bother to properly connect the city with the highway and the rest of Cikarang. Now yes, if you're going to Bekasi City, the train is the best option. But if you're going to Cikarang, most of the interesting places like Delta Mas and Lippo Cikarang are far away from Cikarang station, making the train useless for more local trips. Another issue is that these clusters don't have an exit near the train station. So if you want to get from your house to the station, what should have been a 400-meter walk becomes 1.2 kilometers. Though to be fair, this seems to be an everyone problem, so I won't judge Metland Cibitung too hard for this. So do I want to live here? No, because the access and location is terrible, which makes everything 40 minutes away. Remember, the best commute is no commute. Can you survive here car light? Surprisingly yes, as long as you have a bicycle to cycle to the station, and as long as you do all your daily activities either inside Metland Cibitung, Bekasi City, or Jakarta, and ignoring most of Cikarang. Final verdict, F+. Do I want to live here? No, because getting here is a nightmare. The main road to this place, the Jalan Pandura, is severely congested. The average speed at rush hour, at least according to Google Maps, is 6 kilometers per hour. Okay, that's mainly if you're headed to the highway and all the other independent cities to the west. One thing I like about Harapan Indah is that being a pretty large development, they have everything, even a university, but there's no mall. Well, it's complicated actually. The southern quote-unquote CBD is a bunch of restaurants similar in the style of Flavor Bliss in Alam Sutera. Why not just build a mall here? The advantage of a mall is that everything is inside one building. But with this setup, you need to drive to the restaurant, then drive to the supermarket. It wastes your time, it wastes fuel, and it wastes space. It's like you did build a mall, but then you smash it to pieces, removing tenant spaces for extra parking, and spread it out over an area of 3 square kilometers. This is all made worse by the fact that the CBD is split in half by a wide road that has few crosswalks, and said few crosswalks don't have traffic lights. And there's a canal in the middle, so jaywalking is not an option in most places. This crosswalk is a stain on the otherwise half-decent sidewalks this place has. Well, I say half-decent because the sidewalks likes to randomly end. However, I would say walkability is still decent for Jakarta standards. Lots of 3-line sidewalks, and yes, you can actually live car light here. Transjakarta Line 2B runs basically the whole length of the city. Combine that with the fact that the city is mostly built in a straight line north-south, most people and most things have direct Transjakarta access. There's also GRC services to Block M, though service is extremely limited, and airport buses to Soekarno-Hatta. There is also an angkot to Kranji station that is quite problematic. Unlike every other angkot line that I've tried, that generally keep wait times under 15 minutes and are willing to go even with empty seats, this angkot line, the K30, keeps passengers waiting inside an extremely hot angkot for 30 minutes. I was lucky I didn't wait the full 30 minutes. The same can be said for the 2 ladies who were already inside before me. I knew because they began to complain. When this now full angkot arrives in Harapan Indah, it can't accept any more passengers, presumably passengers who also waited half an hour in the sun. But there is one hope, MRT Phase 3, which was supposed to start construction last year, but then it didn't happen. Verdict, E-. Alright, I cheated. Instead of using transit, I ordered a taxi from Harapan Indah to Aeon JJC. It's rush hour, and the road that the 2B runs in is not in a good state, as mentioned previously. But on the way, I noticed something concerning. Well, a couple things actually. No sidewalk, or sidewalks that randomly end, clusters with no shops in the front, oh dear. Well, at least being in Jakarta, there's transit, right? Right? The Jak 110A, for some reason, refuses to increase its frequency despite the fact that people are desperate for it. Look at how many people are waiting for it. This is madness. At this point, they might as well convert it to a proper bus line with mini-trans buses, or well, at the very least run more angkots. Another problem is that the Jak 110A, for some reason, doesn't stop in front of residential areas. For example, despite passing by in front of Asia, it doesn't stop there. Can you live here car light? My answer to that would be yes, but you better live in the clusters close to Aeon Mall and maybe invest in a bicycle. And if too many residential areas are built far from a Jak 110A, Modernland will need to invest in some local shuttle buses or back Transjakarta to run more microtrans lines. Otherwise, I would answer no to that question and that would be an automatic fail for the city. But yeah, technically you can survive here without a car, just it's not going to be pretty, so it passes the second question. Barely. Personally, besides upgrades to the Jak 110A, I propose making a line from Aeon GKC to Boran Station and Pulau Gading Terminal. I also propose an hourly shuttle bus service connecting all clusters with the main mall and main school. Like, come on, JKC is not that big, you can do it at like 3 buses. Now, do I want to live there? It has a mall. 2, if IKEA counts as a mall. It has a hospital, city park, so no university. The nearest university is Esango in Harapan Indah. Wait, why don't you build a bridge here? Access is decent though, yes, the surrounding roads, especially Jalan Pantura, can get congested. You're located very close to the highway so you don't have to stay on it for too long. You know, I could see myself living there. I don't necessarily want to, but it technically gets a passing grade. Just barely though. D-. Do I want to live here? Although the amount of green space and transit here is tempting, I will have to say no. Because even before exiting the highway, your sense of smell is immediately assaulted by the smell of trash that doesn't stop until you're near the entrance to the city. You will need to endure that smell for half an hour because that's how long it takes to travel the 7 kilometers between Jati Asih Highway exit and Vida's entrance. Congestion in the surrounding areas is pretty awful. When it comes to facilities, if you're into sport, you might actually enjoy living here. Low traffic volumes inside the city makes it great for running. I also spotted a sport club, archery range, horse stable, and ATV track. Vida has no mall. The closest one is the actually pretty good Living Road Kota Wisata, which is a 20 to 30 minute drive away. There's also a couple of hospitals nearby, though no major universities. Can you live here? Car light? Yes. Vida Bekasi is the terminus of Transjakarta Line B41 and Transpatriot Line 1. There's also JR connection services and angkots run outside of this city. Verdict, E-, which is a shame for a suburb that tries its best in terms of transit given the awful location, far from any highway or train station. The way I would describe this city is, hey, let's develop this small piece of empty land sandwiched between factories and Summarecon Kelapa Gading. Build a flyover to easily connect with SKG so our residents can rely on SKG for everything else like malls and hospitals. Meanwhile, Sedayu City Kelapa Gading is literally just houses and restaurants. Admittedly, the city is zoned perfectly, as every housing cluster has commercial areas up front, and they do have this park, which half of it is open to the public, while the other half is only for Sedayu City residents. Still better than Gading Serpong's public park situation though. Oh, and they didn't overbuild their road infrastructure so you can actually cross the street in relative safety. But when you rely on SKG for everything, there better be buses every 10 minutes there. Unfortunately, the GRC bus by Turks has 5 departures every weekday, which means wait times every 2.5 to 3.5 hours. It also costs 25,000 rupiah. Their Instagram didn't mention any distance-based fares, which means just a short ride to Mall Kelapa Gading is almost as expensive as ordering a taxi. So, ignoring transit and the option to just live in Summarecon Kelapa Gading, do I want to live here? Well, sure, I guess the place is nice. Can you survive here? Car light? Hell no. Without a car, you will end up like this guy who's cycling on the flyover connecting this place and the rest of Kelapa Gading. I don't blame him for cycling there, because the roads below aren't in a better state either. Even I ordered a taxi to get to and from this place. The solution? Tell Twex, the operator of this woefully infrequent GRC service, to get more buses, to the point that frequencies become at least hourly. Run it all day every day, and maybe implement distance-based fares so that using it for shorter turns makes sense. Again, what is it with bus operators running stupidly infrequent routes? It's almost as if the owners of said bus operators don't take the bus themselves. Verdict, E-. Sandwiched between Alam Sutera and BSD, 2 cities that actually got a passing grade, is Villa Melati Mas. Do I want to live here? Well, ignoring the option to just live in Al Sut or BSD, yes, a lot of things are accessible from a 30-minute drive, and that includes a train station, multiple malls, hospitals, and universities. Inside, however, the situation is a bit more mixed. Starting with the good, zoning is immaculate. Look at how many people live within walking distance to an Indomaret and Alfamart. The main road is 4 lanes wide, which I think is perfect. Wide enough to have some capacity, but not so wide that crossing it becomes deadly. Now to the not so good. How bad is congestion around Santo Ambrosius Church when there's Mass? This road, on one hand, looks like it's going to get swamped every time there's Mass. But on the bright side, there's probably tens of thousands of residents who live within walking or cycling distance. Actually, speaking of roads, I saw some pretty deep potholes. The sidewalk situation is also not good. Can you live here? Car light. Actually, let me bring up Sedayu City, Kelapa, Gading again, because both suburbs are relatively small, but they do have transit running outside. While Sedayu has angkots outside, Melati Mas has 3 angkot lines: Transjakarta S11 to Jelambar, Agramas to Pasar Rebo and Cikarang, and 2 GRC lines, one operated by Sinar Jaya to Senayan, and one operated by Royal Platinum, also to Senayan, and also to Ben Hill via Alam Sutra. You know, as long as you invest in a bicycle and or live in the clusters near the entrance, I think you can live car light here. Though of course there's always room for improvement. The developers of Villa Melati Mas could perhaps buy 3 minibuses and run them back and forth between the cluster entrance all the way to the very back of the city. They could also run an hourly regional bus service starting at the very back of the city, following the main road, entering Serpong Raya, to Serpong, and terminating in Lebak Bulus MRT station. Fixing the sidewalks, at least along the main road, and adding dedicated bicycle parking in Hypermart is also a good idea. Verdict D-. Yes, I have technically reviewed Graha Raya, though I merged them in the last video with Bintaro Jaya. But I heard there have been some upgrades to the pedestrian infrastructure, so let's check it out. The sidewalks are decent, though of course there are still some problem areas, but some areas also have pretty good sidewalks. Continuous sidewalks are actually pretty rare outside of Jakarta and Alam Sutra. However, walkability is not just defined by sidewalks. Look at how most roads are not so wide that they're deadly to cross. Though a pelican crossing here would be nice. Zoning is also superb. Almost everyone lives within walking distance to commercial zones. The problem here is transit. You have 2 infrequent bus lines with bus tracking that's broken half the time, and they left me behind once since apparently I wasn't standing in the right place, because there's no bus stop sign or shelter and the app told me to stand in the wrong place. There's also the T16 angkot, which I did see arrive somewhat often, somewhere every 10 to 15 minutes. But there have been reports of much longer wait times. There's also GRC services to Lebak Bulus and FX Sudirman, though I can't confirm if the Sudirman one is still running. Investing in a bicycle here is a good idea. Graha Raya is not very big, and its proximity to Alam Sutra means many things are within cycling distance. Speaking of Alam Sutra, cycling to the S61 is an option if you live in Silktown, the western end of Graha Raya. So yes, you can live car light here. Now, do I want to live there? Actually, yeah, kind of. Though mainly because the place is sandwiched between Alam Sutra and Bintaro Jaya, both cities that got a passing grade since they actually have complete facilities while not neglecting transit. Graha Raya isn't just houses either. They do have a mall, a bit not so good one, a market, and a school. Verdict D-, though actually on the higher end of that tier. In order to get a higher score, the solution is obvious. Fix Intrans. Frequency should be at least hourly, like bus tracking must work all the time, bus 6 needs to be extended to Silktown or even better, Alam Sutra, and bus 4 needs to be extended further north, all the way to Fortune or the northern tip of Graha Raya. You know, I was thinking of putting Lippo Cikarang in D+, which is the highest score that all the cities reviewed in this video got. We're not including Meikarta, because if we did, you know exactly which tier it's going. But after visiting there myself, I've decided that the place is unworthy to be in the same tier with PSD, Bintaro Jaya, and Vida Bekasi. First impressions were good. The AO shuttle bus from City Walk Lippo Cikarang to Block M runs mostly every hour. It is a bit expensive at 40,000 rupiah, but the bus is nice. They drive at an appropriate speed, let's just say as fast as legally allowed, and they run on time. But when we exited the highway in Cikarang, traffic, and I thought this place had direct highway access. I got dropped off in a place with no sidewalk. The other side of the main road has sidewalks, but their quality and condition is questionable. Then there's the local public transport, which exists but is very infrequent, and I'm not even sure if it stops in Lippo Mall Cikarang, or anywhere between City Walk and Aeon Mall for that matter. No bus tracking that I'm aware of, or any sort of schedule that states when or if the bus even stops in between those two places. There's a lot of people who live over 3 kilometers from the nearest bus stop with transit. So for the most part, no, you cannot live here car light. And you better prepare yourself for the extremely high transportation costs of living here, because the usable transit that does exist, the AO shuttle bus to Block M, is expensive. Anyway, you do get decently complete facilities here, including at least 3 malls, a hospital, university, and unlike Lippo Karawaci, traffic congestion outside for the most part doesn't back up inside. So would I want to live there? Yes, but just barely. I think tolerate is a more accurate way to describe it. Verdict, E-.